I call the honourable member David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you for the way that you have conducted the debate today. It has been very well done, and I think that we need to...
Hang on, mate, I'll just pick up your tongue.
So, first of all, just want to thank you, but also that was a very interesting speech from the New Zealand First Party. And to talk, that the first line, I think, in that speech was to really suck up to the Green Party, right, as a potential neighbour they sit beside. But then the whole speech then talked about water allocation and how hard it has been to get consents and how in a sustainable way they wish to be able to do it, and how it took 10 years and how they had to invest heavily in getting through that consenting process with regional councils. And I noticed that the Green Party was very silent through that process, because the Green Party would actually encourage more of that process and would not want to see that water allocation happen in the end anyway. And so I think that's the paradox that New Zealand First finds itself in. It is sitting in between two parties that have no concept of economic management, have no desire to actually grow the economy, and yet at the same time tries to spout the rhetoric that they think the public wants to hear. And this debate, unfortunately, has been about a lot of rhetoric on the opposition side. And the opposition try to tug off vulnerable, innocent people. They try to use the emotions that people have and scare tactics. And it's a shame when you come to this House and see how the opposition parties day after day try and prey on the vulnerable in our community by making them scared of what government is doing, when government is doing what is in the best interests of New Zealanders going forward. And the Labour-Green opposition don't have a plan. So for all that they say, they don't have a plan to grow this economy, and all they do is try and frustrate and deny what is in the best interests of New Zealand. And that is a very big shame. And we've got the member across there that talked about a job summit and things like the National Cycleway. Well, they were initiatives that were good, but we are dealing with a big situation at the moment. New Zealand has been in recession because of the world recession, and because Labour put New Zealand into recession before the rest of the world. The Labour members over there may laugh, but look at the facts. Under the Labour economic management, the best of times, New Zealand was put into recession before the rest of the world. The Labour Party cannot deny that. It's a fact of history. It's something that they, as the Labour Party, need to acknowledge and deal with. When we came into government, not only did we find a country in recession, but we found a country that had its future spent by policies of the previous administration. A decade of deficits faced this country without even having to deal with the recession of the world that was about to impact, and without even having to deal with the consequences of the Christchurch earthquake. To our credit, we have dealt with those issues. We have dealt with them in a way that has meant that New Zealanders haven't had the burden of the sharpest edges of the recession, that New Zealanders have seen a future going forward, and we are doing that in a productive and successful manner. We are looking forward at a country and developing it and its industries and its productive base. We are not looking at holding this country back through things like capital gains taxes that the opposition has confirmed this morning that they will bring in as a capital gains tax should they ever get into government, and I see the Green Party nodding in approval. The Greens and Labour Party want a capital gain tax, so New Zealanders out there, remember that. The Greens and Labour Party will advocate for a capital gains tax. They will look at hurting the most productive parts of this economy. That's what a capital gain tax will do. And the New Zealand First Party members are starting to bark in their corner. Well, remember this, New Zealand First. The New Zealand First Party talks about economic growth. well, the biggest impediment to economic growth in New Zealand will be the Labour Green parties, because they will want to bring in a capital gains tax. The productive economy of New Zealand, based around agriculture, will be the most affected by a capital gains tax. The Green Party is smiling now. They know that is the truth, that policy will hurt the most productive part of the New Zealand economy. And New Zealand First speakers won't be talking about how hard it is to get through the consenting process for farm development in the South Island. They'll be talking about how the New Zealand farmers can't actually produce because of capital gains tax requirements brought in by a Labour Green opposition if they ever became government. That is the truth of what we see, and that is different from the rhetoric of what we hear in this House. In this House, we hear the Greens, the Labour, New Zealand First talk about things like growth. They say the right things, but at the same time, they bring about policies that will have the opposite effect, such as a capital gains tax. Don't be fooled, New Zealanders listening to the Labour and Greens. Don't be fooled at all. They don't mean to grow the economy. They don't mean to actually develop you as individuals and as a country. They have only one thing that they want, and that is control, control and control. And they will do that through things like capital gains taxes so that they can control people's voting preferences, and that's what they've done for many years. That is the true difference on this side of the House. We believe in New Zealanders and we give them that chance. And we believe in them over a whole variety of aspects of their life. We believe that they can get a good education. We believe that they can get a good job. We want to give them some rewards for doing that and making the right choices. And we believe that they can invest and make this country stronger. We believe in our people. We don't try and control them, and we don't try and influence them through the way that the Labour Green Party does. And there's one other thing I think that New Zealanders need to talk about, and that's the tax switches that the Labour and Green parties say was $2 billion given to the richest New Zealanders. That is simply not true. It is simply not true. And I ask the Labour and Green members, if they believe that's true, in their next calls to stand up and itemise each part of that $2 billion and to itemise each part of that tax switch and come up with those numbers, because they simply don't stack up. You need to take into account the whole program that was at that time, the change in GST, the change in depreciation. The change in depreciation brings in $1 billion a year from the most wealthy New Zealanders, you could say. And that is not taken into account in the rhetoric of the Labour and Green parties, because they don't want New Zealanders to have the full story. They don't want the truth out there. They only want the rhetoric that they can push and pull to the most vulnerable people in this country. And that's really sad for parties that think or say that they actually represent people that need that assistance from government, because they don't mean it. They don't care. It's all about themselves. It always has been, always will be. That's the nature of the left in politics, and that will never change. When we look at this budget, it's a good budget. It's a hard budget in the sense that we have got difficult times. We can't go out there and promise the world. It would be nice to be able to do that, but we have to be realistic. And in being realistic, we have made the right choices. Choices that will deliver a stronger economy going forward, will give our people the future that they demand and desire, and it won't be without the rhetoric and the approach of the opposition that talk about things then won't actually deliver them, or if anything will deliver things that will actually hurt the long-term interests of this country going forward. And I look forward to the day when the parties on the other side of this House actually stand up and say what is actually out there, that actually believe in our people and actually give them the credibility and sense of desire. And now we get the New Zealand First Party going back to selling the assets. Another one of those senses of rhetoric, and you know, it's very sad to see that that's how the opposition can retain and reinforce its debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
call the Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Thank you, Mr.